Ladies,
Gentlemen,
young people,
courting couples,
and all our single folk,
we've got something just for you.
you. Mentors.
Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded is the place to be every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
with yours truly, Mr. and Mrs. Mahon. Join the conversation as we dive deep into the taboo topics around love, marriage, and relationships. Topics like sex and intimacy,
How to live and cleave,
money,
issues,
infidelity,
singles in the church,
and more. So join us every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
right here on Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded.
And a good evening once again to all of our Sky family. Welcome to Marriage Mentors, our first for the year. Good evening, Mrs. Moore.
Good evening to you.
How are you doing?
Doing good.
Are you ready?
As ready as I can be.
Very good. What the PM say? Get ready. Mama Denise, good evening to you. She says she's waiting in the junction. Glad to have you with us. So we have a hot topic this evening. And our topic this evening is
sex before marriage.
Very good. So Fanya's running from saying it, you. But yes, God. So it's a quote unquote taboo topic. And I think many people fall prey to its effects simply because not just that they don't know, but they don't know the consequences, the effects, they know the challenges beforehand. But you see, the knowing it beforehand in terms of what the outcomes are helps you to have a more proactive approach to it. And knowing how to better manage yourself in this situation. Because it comes down to self-control. This is a big part of it, self-control. So we want to start off by asking our Sky family, what are some of the things you would have heard about sex before marriage, whether for it or whether against it? What are some of the things you would have heard either growing up, or you may have told a young person about the issue? I wouldn't say the topic, but the issue of sex before marriage. What are some of the things that you might have heard over the years? Maybe you remember from your youth group growing up, whether you were in a police youth group or your church youth group. Whether you were a youth leader in some forum, and you were teaching this to young people. What are some of the things you might have taught or heard probably growing up? Because for you to teach it, you must have heard it somewhere. So share with us this evening. Let's have a discussion, and we'll go from there. We have some stuff to get through. Want to share a scenario with you and also look at some of the effects of it as we wrap up. So feel free to send us a message via WhatsApp 333-9950. Send us a WhatsApp message. Or you can give us a quick call, 625-2759. That's 625-2759. Let's keep it quick. Keep it brief if you're doing survival phone line, yeah? All right, so we have some messages coming in. We're talking sex before marriage. I know some parents that don't like to delve into these topics or even talk to their children about it. Maybe have some measure of shame or guilt tied to it. Because, you know, children these days are quick to throw stuff back in your face. So you don't want that. So because you don't want to expose yourself or feel vulnerable, you prefer just not to, just stay away from the conversation, stay away from the topic altogether. Yeah, that tends to happen. Oh, you ain't getting me. All right. Hi, Yo Yo. Good evening. All right. Yo Yo says, hi, Lynden and Dana. Such subjects were not discussed in the household I grew up in. Yeah, that's it. Some homes never even touched the subject. They stayed away from it entirely. And classic case in point. Um, and it may not necessarily have been for the reasons I stated just now. It was just they stayed away from it. They never mentioned it. They just did not speak of it. It was just more. It was more than taboo. It was like those words that should never be spoken. You grew up kind of in an environment like that, didn't you? When you're recording me. Hi.
I did grow up in an environment like that. The only time I would have heard about um those topics was when, back in school days, they would have different people from different ministries
Yeah.
coming and talking, probably Ministry of Health and stuff like that. They would come in to the schools and have conversations, one-on-one conversations with students. As we got older,
Mm-hmm.
they would talk to us about abstinence. They would talk to us about um making sure if it is you're active, um, get yourself tested and all these kind of things. But because of the school that I went to, a lot of them they were not talking about getting tested and stuff. They were talking about abstinence.
Yeah.
Abstinence. Abstinence. I'm not sure how much people listened, but that's the only time I would have really heard about it. And then going into youth church and stuff, you would hear different conversations, but mm,
But I agree with teaching abstinence. Um, but it's not just about frightening people away. I think and I'm encouraging that we give understanding.
mhm.
Because the understanding only comes retrospectively, or for that look back. After the fact, after it done happen and you went through all what you went through, it's like somebody should have told me this before. I wished that somebody told me this. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, but didn't.
Didn't know.
Yeah. And many a times that tends to be the case. Mommy Denise says, my parents told us the best gift you can give your husband is your virginity. Did they explain why? Or did they go into any details as to why? Sally says, sex before marriage is a sin by a number of religions, what I knew and heard growing up. Okay.
Okay.
Singrid said, I heard about sex before marriage when I had. Oh, you see? You see?
Mhm.
You see? After the fact. After the fact. Yeah, Daddy's saying that's a forbidden topic in a lot of households long time. We have a quick call. Hello, good evening. Hi.
Yeah, what's the name? What's the tell you? They tell you don't let a boy touch you.
Mhm.
Don't let a boy touch you because they're pregnant. They never to tell you about sex and it's before
Mhm.
marriage.
Mhm.
Therefore, when boy touch you and you get pregnant, but then you went and do the action and that's how you get pregnant.
Yes, yes.
They teach a long time here to teach you different. Somebody tutor to teach you different. And then now, couple years, they start telling you the right thing.
Mhm.
As young children growing up, they said, don't let boys touch you. Don't play with the boys and them. And that is what it is. But now knowledge expands.
Yeah.
Isn't
And
it
I
nice?
don't think that the knowledge wasn't there, but just nobody
They
was
was
willing to
not
go into
teaching it.
details. Yeah.
Yes. Don't know what they was afraid about.
I don't know either.
Tell them the truth that
Exactly.
set them free. And they will understand. But when I tell them, don't let boys touch you,
Mhm.
and boys touch you and nothing happening, they get into the action.
Yeah. It's like you tell a child, don't do this. And that is exactly what they're going and do.
And doctor, and they want to touch until the fire go really burn them.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But they really get where they say, ouch,
Yeah. I don't know if you I don't know
okay,
if
I'm
you
listening.
yes, all right. I don't know if you when he was younger, we used to have those mosquito coils and he saw the little glow on it and decided, hey, I'm gonna pinch this. And he pinched it and he got burned. And he started to cry and he pinched it again and he got burned. And he cried some more and he pinched it again. I'm like, boy, you're not learning? It's burning you.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided to just stop and cry because it's not making sense. I want to squeeze this light. And many times that's the experience some people have with sex generally. And most things sexually. We tend to have those experiences without valid knowledge
Mhm.
and knowing the repercussions of it if we dabble in it at the wrong time. Mama Denise says, my mother was Catholic and she said the Virgin Mary cries when a young girl loses her innocence. Interesting way to put it. There's no truth or fact to it, but those are things that parents used to tell us to frighten us. A long time in some homes, you disobey your parents and they will make it sound like they're gonna die. How you could be dreaming like this? You just want to see me dead end? So frighten me, sure. So frighten them.
Read this message.
Hi, oh. In my teens, I had a friend and he just touched me and I believe I got pregnant. She said I was so innocent about sex. Because that's what you were told. You were told if a boy touch you, you'll get pregnant. Or if you watch a boy too hard, you will get. But that was their hope that you wouldn't even go that far. So they would tell you, if we could put it this way, the most silly thing, and in hopes that that will frighten you away from even that. Yeah. Look, Singrid saying, I wish someone told me. You see, she said she had no one to tell her about it.
In our house. We learn it for ourselves,
By trial and error, right?
learn it and then find out about the danger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why kids, parents at that time was in long time parents. I had my grandmother, I had my mother, I had and I had older sisters, and that was never a topic in our house. You understand? I don't take the chance of that at all. I just teach my grandchildren and them about that. You understand? Because this kind of thing waiting until they reaching this standard and that standard. And I not in that I talking and I telling them plain.
And which so true. The fact remains, they have the internet now.
Yeah.
And
They have full access.
they're not going to wait until like us and generations before us that didn't have access to the internet where all the information was available. If your parent don't want to tell you what something is, all you have to do is Google it. You'll find out for yourself, and don't wait for your child to go online to discover something. Be the one to break that information to them and tell them in a way that, because Google is not going to instill morals and values in them. At no point in time, Google will say, well, what age are you? I don't think you should engage in this right now. Simply focus on these things because something before its time is going to be dangerous. Google is not going to tell your child that. Google is just going to give them the
All the
cold,
information.
hard facts. Yeah. So if you leave it
You
up to,
asked for it.
and they gave it to you, he just says, this was not a topic at home. This was a topic only for adults and not children. True. All right, we have another voice note.
Yeah, I have one granddaughter. She's 18 when she coming to teach me now. On the internet, like on the internet, you Google this. I said, what?
You see? You see? Or access to all the information. Like some term I heard the other day, I think was Leandra used that term at the restaurant. Some haram. That was the term she used. And I'm like, what is that? I never hear about that. But I came across it not too long after where a Muslim lady, she her daughter was showing her the video with this guy's wife who went to the red carpet event with her peculiar clothing or lack thereof. Yes, and she said the word. So I'm like, oh, okay. You can use it in that context. So these are the things that we have to kind of adapt to the times and make sure that we first as adults we understand, but we're able to educate our younger ones coming up because quite frankly, we're living in a world where it's become so casual. And you have people playing with their lives and their future and stuff like that. And the destiny, if you could put it that way. If it is we leave it that way, it's what's the hope for tomorrow?
True.
The next generation have so many decreased options where that is concerned. So we have to be the ones who educate, who teach bravely, and not wait on the internet, social media to teach our upcoming generations about stuff we should have told them. Yeah. I was looking at a mother and son recently, and the mother has the same disposition about it. It's tabooed and you shouldn't say. And the son just blurted it out. Well, that is how we reach here. How you think it happened? How you think it happened? That is how we reach here. Don't act like you don't know. And that's the thing. We shy away from speaking the truth and being honest about it and real about it. And because of it, the next generation goes full speed ahead without knowing the repercussions when you would know as an adult. You've been through it, possibly, and you never took the chance to share with them. You know, guilt and shame does really stop us from sharing valuable
True.
information. Yeah. Let's not be the ones that do that. All right. So we're dealing with the topic sex before marriage, and we want to share a scenario. You want to share the scenario with us?
Go ahead.
All right. I'll share the scenario. Right. Here, the scenario. For many of us, it might feel a little familiar. But this is a someone, well, I wouldn't call any names, even though they have their names there, but I'll just read the scenario. Carissa is saying it was a frigid, cold night. Well, I'm frigid, same thing, in Michigan, and Alex and I had just left our warm seats at the local movie theater. We were both 17. Our movie was a romantic comedy that included some sensual moments, and we did a little bit of necking in the back of the theater. You all know what that is, right? There's big people listening. I knew better, but I pushed him I pushed him into it, she says. That was the first time anyone had ever been up my shirt. It felt so nice, she said. As a Christian, I've always been taught that sex before marriage is a sin. However, it wasn't until I experienced it firsthand that I truly understood the devastating consequences it can have on a relationship. Alex and I had been dating for a few months and we started to feel a strong physical attraction toward each other. Despite our Christian beliefs, we fell to temptation that night. At first, it felt like the right thing to do. We were in love and we wanted to express that love physically. But soon after, things started to fall apart. Our relationship became more about physical intimacy than emotional connection. I cried my eyes out at the first night because I knew how badly we both believed in waiting until marriage before having sex. Something changed inside both of us. Note those points. Something changed inside both of us before we had been very dedicated to our shared faith. We went to church often and studied the Bible in a small group. After we had sex, we both lost the desire. It seemed like we just became like everyone else. It felt like Superman after being exposed to kryptonite. I felt hollow inside, just empty, like God was no longer with me. You seeing this? My communication with Alex became superficial and we started to argue about everything more often. I felt emotionally entangled with Alex and it became harder. Note that I felt emotionally entangled with Alex. We talked about soul ties last
Yeah.
year. And it became harder to separate my feelings for him from our physical relationship. Eventually, we broke up and all our long talks about the future together stopped. My best friend became a shell of his former self. He mentioned it to a friend, and everyone at school found out. He had been known as a solid Christian guy who lives his faith, and now he's just ashamed of his own hypocrisy. God could forgive him, but he could not forgive himself. I still feel it was my fault. I tempted him too much in the way we women often do. I'd often you hear the details now. I'd often rub up against him with a knowing look in and smile in my eyes. Sit on on his lap, snuggle too tightly. I'd kiss him passionately and then send him sexy messages. Mhm. Now, these are the things that happen, but we shy away from these details.
Yeah.
Like we don't know, well, this is what has happened. This is what it leads to, or what leads up to it. All the flirting and these are the things that lead to it. So this is why I'm so raw with my nieces and nephews, and why I'm so clear cut with Anna. Yeah. It's like my wife always tells me, you so raw with these things, eh? Yes, you have to be because Google will tell them, Google, Mr. Google, right? Not Mr. Google as in Mr. Google, we know, but Google in terms of the platform, the artificial intelligent browsing experience that has been coined to give information to whoever asks, whatever they ask. So she says, I pressed in closely. And when we hugged, and finally nature took over, and his body just couldn't say no anymore. The emotional pain was excruciating. Note that. And I realized that sex before marriage had ruined what could have been a beautiful and likely lifelong relationship. Instead, it became an ugly, dead, and twisted relationship with no hope. It was because of sin itself. Looking back, I realized that I sinned knowingly, and I had been told for years in church that sexual immorality is a major sin. Yeah, I'll stop there. It continues, but I'll stop there for now because she touched on some very interesting things there in that scenario um, that led toward the night. Um, Now, even with us growing up in church, we used to get some of the rules. Okay, Don't stay in no young lady house after a certain time, and don't go getting yourself in no dark spaces. But it's beyond all of that. Because I've heard of people doing these same things in church.
Yeah.
In church. I've heard of situations. I remember years ago I was counseling someone, and that's where it happened in church, in the church washroom. And these are these things. And we want to play like these things don't happen. Only we have to be real, really. Let's not bury our heads in the sand when it comes to these things. Hi, Raina. She says, good night. My father mentioned it was wrong to not wait until marriage. I didn't really understand why, and I also was in the company of school teens and young adults before I was saved who lived a fornicative lifestyle and gave me the impression that it was okay to live that way. It was also said by them that when one reached a certain age as a virgin, that it was considered lame. Now, as a believer, I fully understand why we should wait until marriage. It's true, you're ridiculed for being, even that movie that came out, 40-Year-Old Virgin. It was a very degrading movie. It was, the guy was embarrassed to hold something so valuable. And you know, one of the things that always stayed with me, when you give it up, you can't get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you give it up, when you lose it, you just can't get it back. And that is the truth. That is saying long time boys were told to play with girls, you would die. A boy went to a party and danced with a girl very close and got a bit aroused and thought rigor mortis was, oh my gosh, that you're easy. Susanna says, my eldest sibling was around 17 when she met her husband. He is 3 years older than her. January. Okay, very nice. All right, he held her hand and for the first time, and she pulled away and told him, don't do that. She don't want to get pregnant. My brother-in-law told me this was when I was a teenager. He said he laughed at her so much when she told him that because that's what she was told. That's what she was told. So she was just doing what she was told. If you hold my hand, I'll get a baby bump. Night, night. All I would like people to take responsibility for their own actions and don't blame peer pressure and society for weakness of our flesh. Now, I get what you're saying, Yolanda. It's not just about weakness. We did say it's self-control, and even in this case, where the scenario we were just reading, which is true, someone would have influenced, and it's only so long you could take the pressure or the push. Many people felt it because they like the person, and you're messing with emotions here. They like the person, and then at some point they tell you, well, if you really like me, then you would show it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about weakness. It's being, you're literally playing with emotions at that point. And the thing is, once you begin to cross that line and blur the lines, or both of you not standing against the temptation together, because in this case, she wanted cheating, you know. Carissa wanted cheating, but Alex was the one who was trying to hold his end, right? She literally said she flirted with him, she rubbed against him, so she do him this, she kissed him passionately, and it was only, he could only resist her for so long. It's the same thing happened with Samson and Delilah. She tried with him for so
Yeah,
long
she did.
until she was able to get through and she lick him up right there, cut his hair, dig out his eyes. And I'm not using this to say woman bad and what I'm saying, this could swing anyway. When we're talking about Samson and Delilah or the Delilah spirit, that could work in both male and female. The fact remains is that no matter how strong you think you have someone in a relationship or you have someone pressuring you, is either you cut them off entirely, but if it is you plan on having, because this could have been a very good long-lasting relationship, but they weren't standing on the same side. One person wanted it and the next person was resisting. The resistant person could only resist so long. And yesterday we talked about vessels of purity in the devotional. And one of the things we looked at is it's not just sufficient enough just to say you're going to church and you're praying and you're studying the word. You actually have to put things in place. And in this case, when it comes to the relationship itself, they both had to stand like us. We had to agree and continuously agree because trouble, trouble, you have red blood going through your veins.
That's when he got married so fast.
That was the reason. But probably God knew better. That was the reason. God knew why. I don't know why, but God knew why. Maybe that was it, but that was not in my mind. Let's get it done. And we were talking about that today. Time was of the essence. Not from that point of view, but time was of the essence. So you have to be realistic where these things are concerned. You want to play superhero, you will eventually feel like after it happens, you will feel like Superman after he's been exposed to kryptonite. It's true. Ask anybody who's been through that kind of situation. They'll tell you the exact same thing. Same words they'll use. Don't talk about the guilt. I remember one couple, after they were sexually active outside of marriage and decided, hey, let's clean our life up and get married. One of the things they said to me was, it feels so good to do it guilt-free. Guilt-free. But it still doesn't come without its effects. It still doesn't come without it. And we're going to look at some of those effects in terms of expectations and all of those things, because what it does, it codes you. And we'll get into some of that. So if you have any further thoughts or questions, feel free to send them in. Mrs. Mahon is more than willing and capable
Me?
to answer these questions. Send your messages via WhatsApp at 333-9950. Or if you want to do so via the phone, the number to call briefly is 625-2759. That's 625-2759. So we're talking sex before marriage. So if you have a young person in your home or you know someone and that's been their struggle, send them a message. Tell them, lock on now. Because this conversation would be helpful to them. And this is just not for young people. It's for anyone. Because the principle goes across the board. Yeah, it goes across the board. We weren't too young, and we had to apply the same principle. Yes, young, but not in our teens. We were in our 20s. I was in my early 30s. Yeah. And we still had to apply the same principles. So the fact remains, yes, these are some of the things that you have to go through. Someone else says, much like Carissa and Alex, I made the same mistake with my college years when I became a Christian. I regretted it profoundly. Though I know that God has forgiven me, I'm still saddened that I was not able to offer myself to my husband as a virgin, as he offered himself to me.
Hmm.
Now, that in itself, I don't know if you ever, well, for many people feel this feeling that she's describing in different ways. That feeling of inadequacy
Mhm.
in marriage, like you just don't measure up in some way, form, or fashion.
True.
That when you look at the comparison, so to speak, of you and your spouse, there is that feeling that comes over one person. They feel less, or maybe two, because they're looking at different things. Um, that causes why you laughing? That causes them to feel less or inadequate when they stand next to their significant other, their spouse. Like things just don't stack up in their favor, and the other person has so much more to offer. Why are you agreeing so profoundly? You went through that? I say that you. But yeah, sometimes that happens in relationships, right? And in this case, she felt less off because she couldn't offer herself to her husband as a virgin, but he was. Um, she says, you'd be surprised how many people actually do wait until marriage, something I never knew until I found faith in Christ. Abstinence can have many benefits, including allowing couples to build a strong emotional connection and focus on building a solid foundation for their relationship. It can also prevent unwanted physical and emotional consequences, such as sexually transmitted diseases, unplanned pregnancies, and emotional pain. Now, what they're talking about here, um, one of the things we know, well, two of the things we know, we're quite familiar with, and we see the effects of in terms of sexually transmitted diseases or STIs, and unplanned pregnancies. We tend to see that more than the other one, the emotional pain. But that is a reality. And only who feels it knows it.
Knows it.
Only who feels it knows it. And that's actually a big part. And even though you're going through the other two, you still have that one to deal
Yeah.
with. Whether you're going through the other two or not, you have that one to deal with, the emotional pain. Furthermore, she says, having sex and then marrying someone else can be difficult for a spouse to accept. The emotional entanglement, here's that word again, entanglement from a previous sexual relationship can cause jealousy, can cause mistrust and insecurity in the new relationship. Yeah. Many a times we don't consider this. Yeah, I just move on with my life. Yes. He was a waste of time, but you're going into the next one and you don't know what you're not studying. All right. Well, what am I carrying? You're carrying a waste of time. Because the entanglement continues. Remember, we talked about soul ties, um, and that mixing or those carrying of persons, lugging them around emotionally, because we think, okay, sex is just casual sometimes, but there's more. And we looked at that when we talked about intimacy. Um, there is more to it than just the act. It's a whole lot more. There's emotion, there's spiritual um, entanglements and connections that are made that last, that last. And until you ask God to bleach them out of you, they remain. Hey, Shade, good evening to you. Shade was looking for this topic. they remain. Those connections remain, and it's important to teach your young people. You want to see tell people up to today. We were talking with a young man, and his belief is that the world is so corrupt that it's impossible to have a successful relationship, that it's impossible to meet someone who will do life well with him. Because he's asking me, how you just make out, boy? You you're leaving home with the same woman, you're coming to work with the same woman, you're going from one job to the next with the same woman. How you just make out? You doesn't just feel like you need to get away. I said, no. I don't know if you heard when he said use 1 in 1 million. No, 1 in 8 million. I don't know if you heard that when he said it. I said, no, I don't have that issue. What's the sense being married to someone if you just want to run away from them? What's the sense? What's the sense? And I'm glad I don't have that issue. But it all comes down to many of these things that work in the background. And for some relationships, they're not sure why they're successful. And this might be one of the things that contributed to your success, where you took the time to build your relationship, or you just happen to evade sex before marriage. And because of that, you now have a byproduct of a strong emotional connection, a strong foundation for your relationship that makes it somewhat easier for your future. Yeah. But be conscious about it. Some people stumble into it. And I want to encourage you to encourage, whether it is yourself or someone else, to encourage them to be very deliberate about these things. Don't just hope that it happens. Many people go into marriages with great fear of divorce and great contingencies for divorce. That's simply because my reply to that, it's simply because you're not building it strong enough. If you're going into it with intent and saying, well, like an insurance policy, then clearly something is up. Something is up. Yolanda says, I love this topic because I believe that it is a topic that should be in all churches because accountability helps people stay on course. True. I do agree. But even beyond accountability, and I say beyond accountability, it's being responsible. And responsible enough, not just that, okay, after the fact, being responsible enough to say that I'm taking control of my future deliberately. Many times we use accountability in church, but not necessarily for the sole purpose of saying, accountability, it's really retroactive. And I want us to put just as much emphasis on the responsibility for your values and protecting them, responsibilities for finding someone who will stand on the same side as you when it comes to these issues of whether we are covenanting to not have any kind of sex before marriage. These are the things. And it's not just because accountability tends to come after the fact where you're now going to tell on yourself because this happened, or I am struggling and maybe on the brink of trouble when trouble already started. And we're not really taking the bull by the horn from the point of responsibility. How are we teaching ourselves and our young people that? How are we teaching ourselves and our young people that this is that important, that you have to be deliberate about it? Yes, you're going to have feelings, but what do you do when you have those feelings? Do I shut them down? Do I act upon them? How do I deal with these feelings? Because yes, they will have feelings. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they like each other. What do I do? How do I build that correctly? Do I just tell them, well, run in? Because we used to hear that, you know. You see a fella, run the next door. Girl, run the next direction. They tell the girls, if see a fella, run. Or vice versa.
And it was so bad for me that I never grew up hearing that.
Mhm.
It wasn't even
You wasn't even hearing run.
nothing.
There was no talk about it. So you going in blind.
Because you don't know anything. You just go in because you're innocent.
Whatever happened.
Happens. Whatever happens, happens. And then it was so bad that you you would see that you have relatives,
Mhm.
but the relatives have is a bunch of siblings,
But
but
different.
they have different fathers. It's like, and you can't ask anything.
Me, I was
You
asking.
can't ask because we didn't grow up like, especially now.
Willie Pooh will I get some
Now
friends?
I am almost 40. A few years away from 40.
You have quite a little
And
bit
it's
to go.
still it's still difficult to even say the word. That sounds so nice coming from you just now. Say it again.
You're quite a few years away from 40.
I receive it in Jesus' name. Yeah. Yeah, it's so bad that up to now you don't hear me using the word sex a lot. I don't, this is just not how I grew up.
No, people, I'll be very honest with you all. Eh? I used to tease my wife. She's like, I don't know. She used to say to me, I don't know how you just say that word so comfortable. And I started saying sex, 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 sex.
It's sickening.
And it's not that I was trying to be freaky or weird or anything like that. It was to break the taboo.
It didn't break it.
I know you're coming out of it.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. I can see the shifts, the small shifts, the tiny steps. I'm seeing it. Even in your family as well, I'm seeing it.
No,
Tiny, tiny
it's
shifts.
not good shifts.
No, it's a step in the right direction, honestly.
For you.
It's a step in the right direction. Because we need to have those conversations.
He is so normal and just himself with my family. It feels as though he's unsaved. No, because you understand how bad
Yes.
it is, right?
I do understand because but it's a false sense of spirituality when
Yeah.
you're doing this stuff but you don't want to say what
Mhm.
it is. It's a false sense of correctness or purity, if we could put it that way. If we're aware of those things, we practiced it, but we don't want to say, well, let's talk the truth. Let's take the bull by the horn. Let's say it as it is. And when I say it as it is, not that you're going using any kind of language, that you're able to have the conversation.
I remember the first time hearing you say you were so open. You're saying, but grandma says, did he? I didn't want to see my family for days. You embarrassed me so much. No, really, you embarrassed Pastor. This boy is an
I
embarrassment.
could see I took my heart, girl. No, because I said, grandma, you know about that.
It's like, no, we don't talk like that.
But these are things, honestly, these are things we shouldn't shy away from. Having the conversation as real people. Yes, what happens in the bedroom is for the bedroom. And there's some details you can't really tell. But when it comes to being frank and and giving someone the info, because I used to wonder when someone is getting married, what kind of prep do they really go through? You have two virgins or someone who had partners before. What do they tell them? I used to wonder that growing up when I was small.
I think now we don't even focus on those things. We focus more on um getting the best of the best for the wedding day.
Mhm.
So we focus on the wedding day. We focus on the wedding and not the marriage.
And not the marriage, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're setting that couple up for failure.
Yeah.
If they're going in blind, or a young couple, they see each other, they like each other, but they're not being they're not given all the information, and they might think, well, I just have to figure it out on my own, as I go along, as we go along, and we however it hang its swing, so to speak. And as they go along and mistakes happen, they now just have to roll with the punches. And my question is, where is the deliberate action? Where is the responsibility? And responsibility first on the ones who knew, the ones who experienced and never shared, never said anything. Well, they are young people, they know what they're doing. Not that they know what they're doing. Let them make their own mistakes, or whatever it is they want to say. But you never pull the two young people together and say, hey, I understand. I see this. And I was once there, but these are the dangers of going along this way, of practicing this thing. If you want a healthy relationship for the future, this is what doing the negative does to you, and this is what the positive does to you. This is how it will progress. When you see this happening, take this as a sign. Take this as a sign, hey, that things are getting very emotional, that you're heating up. Who tells young people, okay, that this is because what's going to stop you from liking somebody and becoming aroused? What must rise up at the inside of you at that point? Are you just going to be driven by what your private parts at that point, or do you begin to think as a team, okay, let's change our environment? Let's change our environment. This is trouble. We're seeing this. Let's be proactive and move. Let's change our surroundings, because this is problems. You're home, he going home by her, and parents going and sleep. And all they sit down there in the dark talking and whispering. And before you know it, who touching who, and fire start. How do you lead up to that? How do you deal with such situation? As to responsible people, taking the responsibility and not just being accountable after the fact. Well, Pastor, this is what happened between me and Suzette. You don't want those kinds of situations. You don't want those kinds of situations of coming to tell after shame happens. Be
And
proactive.
sometimes we don't even tell.
And that's the thing. You live with the guilt. Yeah, you're showing up in church because you don't want it to look anyway. And you're feeling as though everybody's seeing what you did. Everybody seeing what you did. You want to cover up under every single thing. All of a sudden.
This is what sin does.
Exactly. These are the effects. So now you want to cover up every single thing because you feel so exposed, so naked, so vulnerable.
Yeah, shame.
Yeah, that is just the truth. Exactly. So we have another message. Well, I don't know how, but I see a few people that I know that are not married offering up their babies by the altar. Is this the norm, or is this a new tradition? Because to me, that looked like sex before marriage. I don't. Well, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, a flap. That's exactly what it is. Wasn't immaculate conception. They did it, and a baby came. And we have a next message. One of my younger sisters, but older than me, she got involved with her first boyfriend at 14, and he was just 16. When I was a teenager, she told me that she and him didn't know what they were doing, But unfortunately, her boyfriend's brother, wife told her what to do. What? When you say told her what to do, okay, let me read. Well, that was it. She got pregnant. Oh, she told her how to do the thing. All right. Well equipped her. She was Google to her. And she got pregnant, had her son at 16, then got pregnant 3 months, like, what? Again, and had a girl. They lived together for some years, then got married. They are grandparents today and living in the US. She told me, where am I?
Don't do what she did.
She told me don't do what she did.
She had to drop out of school.
All right. When she got pregnant, she did some courses later on, but it was not the same. She wished that she had put her education first. It was not easy, but they struggled and held it together to today. Yeah. And those are the things that sometimes we make look so easy afterwards. And we're not telling the younger generation, hey, well, this decision I made, yes, I don't regret having the children because you don't want the child to feel like a mistake.
Yeah.
But the act was a mistake, right? How do I say this? Once you're doing sex, a baby could come. I'll say it like that.
Yes, please say it like that.
Once you're doing sex, a baby could come. That is just the reality. I remember when I was in primary school, that was the first time, and I think the earliest part of my life that I noticed teenage pregnancy. Not me.
Oh no.
One of my
I thought
classmates.
you had said that was the first time you did that.
No. It was the first time I saw it so close up in my world, in my young world, where a classmate of mine got pregnant. And we were, I think, just in standard 5 at the time. Yeah.
Even then, I didn't know it was possible.
Yeah, we were just in standard 5. And now the person that the father of the child was young, just like her. So now this changed both their lives forever. Children, but parents. And now your focus changes and your emphases and ambitions have to shift because there is this little one. And I remember going to the park when I was young, and you're hearing this baby crying, and I'm saying to myself, I could only imagine what this person is going through. I could only imagine what this person is going through. Because all I could have compared it with was having a young pet. And I remember that time I had a puppy who used to cry a lot in the night. And I remember Daddy and they told me, if you want the puppy, you have to get up and see about it. And I remember I sleeping, my eye full of sleep, and puppy crying in the night because the puppy wanted milk. Yeah. And he had to get up and go and feed this puppy. And I would sleep in my eye, and then they ain't getting up. They'll wake me up. Go and see about your child. I remember Daddy tell me, go and see about your child. And I there and I go and make the milk and I warm it up and I give the puppy. And I stay up with the puppy until it relaxed. Just like a child. And I remember those times and how difficult that was. And I'm saying, but with an actual baby, this is very different. I could have only imagined what she was going through.
So you compare the baby
to a puppy? No, that was the only thing I could have related to. That's the only thing I could have related to. Good evening to my 2 clinical psychologists. Very informative as usual. I'm in your company, not from the beginning, but I gather what the topic is. So we're talking, just for those of you just joining us, the topic is sex before marriage, and we're looking at the effects. We looked at a couple scenarios, and we're looking at the effects of it. even going into marriage, how it really impacts your life going forward, and why it's important to share or enlighten or kickstart responsibility in those younger ones coming up and taking responsibility even as an adult, whether at whatever stage you are in your own life, whether getting into marriage or taking responsibility, at least to inform those coming up. Maybe you're married and that's no longer your state of life and state of existence, the arrangement of life for you, but you can share and encourage someone else who is coming up inside of it, inside of those stages and those ages where they have those realities to deal with. How do you open their eyes, shake their understanding, add a little bit of knowledge that helps them along the way, and not leave it to Google? All right, so it's just around 4 after 10, and I want to look at some pros and cons, if there are any pros at all. Now, I wouldn't even call it a pro, but let's get into to these right. Let's just get into it. Right? Does sex before marriage affect the relationship? Yes, it does, and we saw that. Having sex before marriage can impact a relationship in many ways. It can deepen, well, some say it can deepen emotional intimacy and bring couples closer. However, it also leads to complex, complex, let's highlight that. It leads to complex emotions like guilt.
Like the scenario.
Yes. Guilt or regret, right? Whether you have values or not, yeah, something on the inside of you will always wake up, because generally all across the world, fornication is a known thing, right?
It's so common that it's normal.
It doesn't matter what religion.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, saved, unsaved, it's just understood, right? So knowing that it begins to awaken a bunch of complex emotions within you that you're now going to have to deal with. Yeah. Communicating openly about expectations and feelings is essential, right? So, and we said that having sex before marriage opens up your experiential resume now going into marriage, and therefore what was good, what wasn't good, you now have a history logged in your mind. What he used to do, what she used to do, how it felt, all of those things are now pathways written into your brain that you are now heading into this relationship and either hoping or looking, deliberately looking to relive those days. Not necessarily with the person, in terms of your past person, but hoping to relive those experiences because it felt good. I remember a new experience always somehow sticks with you. It's like your first love. Everybody know about your first love. Even Jesus talked about it, right? There's a whole song about that very first time. And she said in the song, some of you have to think back a little bit longer. I'll give you some time. You know what I'm talking about? And the older ones know what I'm talking about. That song. Your very first time? You don't know that song? Well, ask your mother. She'll tell you what that song is about.
I'm innocent.
No, but she's in Maloney. But yes, these are the things that you have to think about, and these are the effects that it tends to have on a relationship. It creates some expectations that you're now going into a marriage with because of your past experience. what used to work and what didn't work, and all of these different kinds of things, down to some people go into relationships with expectations of the size of the person's body parts, all of these different things. And we have to be realistic about it. We have to be realistic about it. These are things that some people just choose to stay away from talking about, but they come up in relationships. They come up, and many people have fights about these things, and somehow somebody is not pleased because the sex isn't good and all of these kinds of things, because simply because of expectations that were created before. So those are some of the cans of worms that sex before marriage opens up, and you want to make sure that you understand. Right? So it does. It develops sexual experiences, and you won't want to get into marriage with a script that has already been written, and now you're holding your marriage partner to a list of expectations that wasn't meant for him or her, based on your specific gender as God prescribed it to be. You know what I mean? I'm not going to mix up things there. Right? So you don't want to begin to script yourself. That's what it does. So if you're a young person, understand that it scripts you, it codes you in a particular way. If you ask a couple who has had no sex before marriage, no intimacy, physical intimacy before marriage, compared to one who had partners before and would have had sex before marriage, whether with their partner or whatever is the case, somehow, even with if that was their only sexual partner, the one that they ended up marrying, somehow when you do take your vows, then things still change. Somehow marriage opens it up and changes everything. Even though the guilt is no longer there, it opens up some things. And worse yet, if you had other sexual partners, where, now this is alarming, because as I'm talking about it, I'm thinking about the applications and the problems that arise out of situations. Let's say the guy had several sexual partners. He played himself, and just before he got married, he said, "All right, well, I'll settle down." But the only person he was now having sexual relations with is the person that he's going to get married to. The coding that he has from a life of living it up with any female that he had before still rests with him. Therefore, that desire for change and various types of interactions are still there, which now creates another problem of the appetite for different sexual partners. It's been there. Until that is shut off completely, that door is closed, that will remain and can even proceed towards untoward infidelity in the marriage. And these are some of the things we have to still consider and warn, so to speak, whether it is ourselves or younger generation coming up. This is why it's so important. Yes, Ingrid, let me hear you.
But Lynden and Dana,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes a couple get married, right? And honeymoon night, they was dissatisfied because I don't know, they didn't they didn't in the bedroom to find that the husband didn't wasn't what they want.
Enough performing,
That's how
probably.
tough he was.
Uh-huh.
How to put they wasn't satisfied with the sex because they find the husband was too small.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes a couple, married couple,
Expectations.
Mhm.
honeymoon night and they had problems.
Yeah.
You know about any couple like that.
It said that she had a history. She
Mhm.
had a history of, no, let me don't say that, but she had a history that created a certain expectation. So, Olia, I speak raw, so let me keep it radio worthy. In a one-on-one situation, I'll be very frank. But she had experience before. And this is what created that problem where she would not have been satisfied. The coding was there already. Yeah. She felt robbed. She felt robbed. She was expecting more, um, right? She was expecting more and felt as
She
though
was expecting a bigger package.
well, yes, let's put it like that. Thank you
Yes.
so much. I appreciate the term, the pull out with the term. Yeah, I appreciate it. She was expecting a bigger package, but felt as though she was underserved.
Yeah, she was expecting a bigger package, but she get a small package.
But then let me behave myself. It's 50 minutes.
From a particular website
Lord Jesus.
to return it. No return.
And now she has to live with it, right? She has to live with that. And that's the interesting thing, which leads back to
Where you
some
get that though?
what's that?
That whole idea of how big it should be, and where did we get that from?
It wasn't just about how big it literally comes from experience. She had experience that registered within her brain that this was satisfying. Remember the experience that she had. She's now remembering that. And now going into that,
Oh, it doesn't have to
expecting.
be personal experience.
It
It
may
could
it
be.
may have no, but then she wouldn't be able to know based on experience. She might have heard, but this would have been experience. For you to be satisfied, it says you now have an appetite. Right? Whenever you have it, let's use food. You have a craving um for cinnamon sticks,
Mhm.
right? And you want the no, Lynden, no, let's use another analogy. You're feeling for pizza, right? You want chicken on the pizza with pineapples and sweet peppers, right? I was where I was going now wouldn't have turned out well. So let me use pizza, right? I don't want to use any slights to it. So I'll just use very neutral terms. Pizza, chicken, pine, and sweet peppers. You want that on the pizza, but you're accustomed eating that. That's what you're feeling for, right? And when you go, they decided they're leaving out the pineapples, they're giving you beef,
Mhm.
and there is no the sweet pepper is just not enough. So one, the aroma change and the taste is completely different. You expecting this particular pizza, you want the people, which is known as what? The clock and crust, and you get cow and crust, right? You get cow and crust instead of clock and crust, meaning chicken, right? They totally switch up the pizza on you. How many times have we bought, let's say, food one place and it tastes so good one time.
And then
And
you
you,
went back
you
again.
go back expecting, sweeping up your chops for this particular meal. And when you
It's
go,
the same.
it's either a next cook did it or some kind of thing like that. And it just did not taste the same. So therefore, you have an appetite. If you have an appetite and you get what you would have had before, you would be satisfied. In order to change your appetite, you've got to go without it for some time. It's just as with your custom eating a mountain of food. In order for you to reduce to eating smaller meals, you have to do that for a period of time. Forget what it's like to eat a mountain of food. Or have no food at all. Cut off your memory of what your appetite was before. But she went into marriage with a previous appetite, and the waiter wasn't serving what she was hoping. Oh Lord, Daddy used something else. He said she should have used a measuring tape before marriage.
I think you missed you skipped a voice note, yeah, from Zingrid. Mm-hmm.
What I stand up here today.
Yes. Right. My next two sisters didn't end up with their first boyfriends.
Yours?
Huh?
Your next two sister?
I'm reading with
Oh,
anonymity.
okay.
My next two sisters didn't end up with their first boyfriends. Me, on the other hand, when I reached 18, I thought I was old enough to have my first kiss, but it didn't happen then. I read this book at 19 years old called The Missing Dimension in Sex by Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong. I remember after reading that book, I wasn't interested in kissing no one till I got older. I was 23 years old when two of my sisters and their girlfriends pushed and forced me to go on this date with a white guy from abroad who came to Trinidad with some Trini friends. I had no choice but to go, and my relatives were on the other side of the restaurant checking up on me and him. I will tell you all part two of that another time because I don't feel there is enough time now. Now you have me vested in the story. What happened? All right. Someone says, okay, why is WhatsApp taking so long? Come on, move quick. There we go. I had sex with my fiance once and I got pregnant. I felt happy slash bad when it was all over. The next day, I was so sorry I did it because I wanted my wedding night to be the first. We got married when I was 3 months pregnant. Sorry I didn't wait because I suffered myself until marriage to have sex again. It's so much nicer when you wait for that marriage bed. We live for 47 lovely years. Yeah, I know you would. I know you would. Plunks, what is the scene? Says, welcome back, Mrs. Lips.
You know we're recording, right? You just revealed everything.
What is it I'm hearing? Yes, you're hearing quite well. So we're talking about sex before marriage and the effects of it. Some of the dangers. Right. So now these are some of the things that some marriages you have to go through. Some things you have to walk through. Assessing or identifying sexual problems. whether or not. Now, some couples, they go into it, and I say go into marriage and the whole sexual thing, and discover only after that there are issues arising, whether it be problems conceiving for whatever reason, um, through either some physical thing with him, some physical thing with her. And there is, some persons may present that, and I would have seen those things happen before, where persons would tell you, well, you have to know if the man thing working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to know if the man thing working. How you gonna know if she everything in order with her? So that means go and make a baby. That means, so if it is you don't like what he have, you go and change it, right? You go and change it. Then that's essentially what we're telling the person. If it is you give that advice or you've heard that advice, that be the reason for changing the partner.
Mm.
And anytime there is a desire to change, is because the appetite was set beforehand. Sex, it allows you, when you keep yourself for marriage, it allows you to understand your marriage partner better. And we said that, we touched on that before, where it allows you to establish strong emotional connections, where everything isn't built on, which we saw inside of the scenario with Carissa and Alex, about everything being built on sex. Because the relationship they had became very physical, and they were not able to connect the way that they did anymore. They stopped, as she said, her words, they stopped sharing future plans. They were arguing about everything, and these are issues that you only understand when you're in a situation as such. Breaking that strong foundational connection and shifting the relationship toward a place of only physical pleasures. Now, this can happen inside of a marriage. Nobody's saying that that can't happen, but it is fixable, more easily fixable inside of a marriage, because you now have that bond and history.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of a marriage, you're free. You feel as though you're not obligated to fix it, and you're free to go.
Yeah.
And being free to go after you've had that sexual connection is the soul tie problems that go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So fixing it, yes, nobody says that a marriage doesn't go through those kinds of things where things grow cold and you're no longer discussing future plans and sharing that kind of intimate connection. Those things are fixable within a marriage. You sometimes have to go to counseling and reestablish that connection. Spend some time. Maybe life is lifing so much that you got so busy that you're not connecting. You're not taking that time to connect with your spouse on that level. But if it is you shift your relationship in the budding stages, because there are important stages that a marriage goes through that builds a foundation for lasting and weathering those storms. But if it is you shift a budding relationship from building that foundation to fully sexual, it's hard to come back.
Yeah.
It's going to be very hard to come back. And simply because there is no marital structure keeping one inside of those thought patterns. Marriage in itself creates a certain structure in your mind that says, hey, I'm in it for the long haul. It should do that, but at least it should create that mindset. And if it is it's not creating that mindset for you, then you're not ready for marriage. Let's be honest. Whether as a young person or whatever stage you are in your life, if it's not creating that shift of saying, if I'm entering into this covenant, I'm entering not to come out of it. So therefore, we have to work very hard, 100 times harder than we are now, trying to keep our relationship together. This boyfriend girlfriend thing we have going on, we have to work 100 times harder inside of a husband wife kind of arrangement. All right, we have some more messages coming in. Yes. All right, we have a statement. Whatever awakens your sexuality is often what you desire. True. Therein lies the expectation. And that can become very dangerous in marriages because even if someone was sexually abused, there is an appetite often still. How many, if we use this case in point, how many times have we seen an abused person, a victim, become an abuser? How many times have we seen that? Watch the show I like to watch. SVU. Or call the Rape Crisis Society and ask them. Many times counselors have to sit with victims and walk them through a process. And a major part of it is to ensure that this thing shatters to the point where it does not reoccur or come up later on, where they now become a perpetrator. That the process of healing has to be so thorough that you want to be healed from it, but make sure that you live a stable life afterward. Because you have to be very careful with the appetites that you create within yourself. So you're quite right, Yolanda. Very, very right. We have to be very, very careful with the appetites that we create because they can work against us in terms of our productivity when it comes to marriage. God's word is real and life is real. We should always obey God. This topic is so important that I wish the world was listening. Me too. I do. And there's so much that we can learn if we come back to the point of that guilt and shame. Because we were looking at there's a series that we look at, and I remember I think it was in the final episode we looked at was where this big mogul multimillionaire lady called this group of younger women together, and she was just giving them a pep talk, but giving them a pep talk from the position of not trying to hide her own mistakes. She said, I made mistakes, but you don't have to make them. You don't have to go and make the same mistakes I made. So you can learn from my mistakes. How many parents can actually say that they can confidently say to their children, hey, I failed in this way. I messed up here, but I don't want you to make that mistake. And not just stop there, because it's important to not stop there. Go to the point of saying, this is what this looks like. And these are the struggles I too would have had to face. And I either see you're reaching that stage in your life and I want you to make better decisions than I did. Not that you're trying to live through your children. No, not that, you know. What you want to do is give them the information that helps them to be wiser. You want to help them to be wiser, to make better decisions on their own. You want to equip them enough to take responsibility for where they are and not having to just come and account after the fact and try to do damage control and clean up. No, you wanted to have them to be proactively responsible, to make better decisions. know that, okay, yes, it's fine to have feelings. Everybody does. It's fine to have feelings. But how do you walk through this? How do you deal with this? As a young man, you know, you you have this feel, you like this girl. How do you deal with it? Sit down with your young people, talk to them. It's okay to have feelings, but that don't mean you act upon everything. And even when it's very strong, those are the times you need to be more responsible. Be responsible with your emotions. Teach them about emotional intelligence. Why this is important, not to just go and connect with anybody sexually, because it will be problematic in your future. It will create an appetite for you that when you do find the one that you want to settle down with, after you run through all these other girls, you have this expectation that you're going to be holding over her head. Do you want to actually do this to your married wife after you've had all these other persons? No. So then therefore, make sure you offer to your spouse a clean page that says, let's experience life together. And you want that measure of purity. That is what purity looks like. Not being, because if you take a piece of paper and you scribble it up, that's impurity. Less writing on it. That's why I talked about that coding or that scripting that you get because of these experiences. You sleep with this one like to do it this way, they like this position. And we have to be real with it. Particular habits that they have. Who want to do it, go in the park and do it, who want to do it here and do it there, and every single thing. And it develops this weird appetite. And I say weird because you know how people could be kinky and weird, you know, all kind of nonsense. Who want to swing from the roof and use this whip and all kind of craziness. You're laughing. People have some weird practices, and simply because they're on this roller coaster, it created this particular euphoric feeling, and they just want to go further and further. It's like drugs. So they became very, very wild and crazy long before they got married. And you're going and get a virgin for a wife? What you going and put the woman through? Or what you going and put the man through? Who probably kept himself. And he wondering what freak it is I married. That's what he will be saying in the back of his mind. What freak did I marry? Next thing she asks him, I want a pole in your room. For what? You're a firewoman? Yes. Yes.
He probably wants to know what he end up in.
Exactly. All right. Someone says, me too. I pray the parents who need to hear this would receive every word. Not everybody has a gift to speak on sexuality and not provoke. I think that I thank you so much for the spirit in which you are addressing this topic. Thank you so much. You're most welcome. What's any police at the end? In the bedroom? There are problems. And you see how damaging this thing could be. Some people think, all right, well, it's experience. And these are the things we glorify. You are real experienced, boy. No, that is not good. It's not good. It's not good. I heard somebody having a very weird conversation the other day. And I excuse myself from just within earshot because I'm like, that's not a good conversation to be having. The older woman said to the younger man, something to the tune of she will make him feel things that he never thought possible. And I'm like, you're a wicked woman. No. Let me stop there. It's true. It's true. These are very, very important points. And how many persons would have gone into it? Just imagine you're going into it. Your family didn't grow up talking about it, but yet still, either you kept yourself or you had some experiences and you're going into a marriage with a background of not talking about it. So how do you address these issues when you face them? It's another generation that don't know how to talk about the issues. So therefore, they're now having challenges within the marriage when it comes to those things, whether it is expectations or how they should have dealt with it. Probably the counselor didn't go through those things because they didn't want to bring up those things because of whatever the reason is. They downplay it. Well, I had some experiences, I had a couple. Or I just had one and they lying through the teeth. And because the counselor say, all right, well, I'm taking your word for it, they just continue with the other things and not delve into that. And then fire on the mountain, as Ingrid says. Fire on the mountain a couple years later, or maybe a few months later, they walk down the aisle, nice, glorious day. Behind closed doors, they having problems. And too ashamed to even go back to counseling to say, well, I didn't tell you this before, but we should have talked about this. These are the issues. What's in it to lie? Someone says the Bible said that older women should teach younger women about how to be wives and men vice versa. But I think we're lacking teachers who have the purity to teach these things. True. True. Too many of our teachers operate from a place of shame and guilt. Too many. So therefore, they don't teach because of shame and guilt. All right, here's the next part of the story we was getting before. Mr. Mahon, the white guy was 29 at the time, and me, almost 23. We met in February 2nd, weeks before my 23rd birthday. He visited Trinidad 4 times after that in that same year. I was not interested in him until almost a year after. He did so much for me and my family. I ended falling in love for the first time. We used to talk a lot on the phone, and there was no WhatsApp at the time. Yeah, WhatsApp only came just the other day. So this bill used to come so high. To make a long story short, we continued long distance for over 2 years. Then a business deal went bad with one of my sisters and her husband, and a whole lot of drama. And the guy broke up with me and never came back to Trinidad. My sister blamed me, of course, because I stood up for the right thing. I forgave everyone and part 3 another time. You doing it in episodes, girl? Some of the counselors don't even know what to say to the couples. True. And not all, eh? Sometimes the counselors they go with the information that they're given. If the couple is truthful and open, and this is why we say whenever you go to counseling, tell the whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
Yeah, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. you go to counseling, be very open. Um, Better yet, if the counselor has a nice prophetic spirit, where the Lord will be able to tell them, hey, ask this question. But if if they don't, um, chances are chances are that some things will slip and later it will slide. And that causes problems. You want to deal with those things. When you have an opportunity to sit with a counselor, talk about everything, deal with all the issues, especially in premarital counseling. Deal with the more issues that you're able to bring to the fore and walk through, deal with, clarify, fix would be better for you. Be better, absolutely better. All right. So we have a marriage devotion this evening.
After this.
Hmm?
After this.
Well, they're still coming, so go ahead. Mhm.
So it's now time for your marriage devotion inside Marriage Mentors for this evening. And this one is entitled Love and Respect. And of course, First John chapter 4 and verse 19 tells us we love because he first loved us. To misjudge the source of something can be embarrassing, as in incorrectly guessing the sender of an anonymous love letter. It can also be painful, as in having the wrong tooth filled. Finally, it can even be dangerous, as in repairing a gas leak by soldering the pipe just shy of where the actual crack is. To assume that our ability to love another person has its source in our own hearts carries with it the potential to be embarrassing, painful, or dangerous. Remember, we love because he first loved us. While early in marriage, the depth of our love may seem to thrive in the abundant delight and overflow in our own hearts, a day may come when finding a drop of love or respect in our heart for our spouse will feel impossible. But where does that leave us? It leaves us with the call to look at Jesus. God made flesh and came among us. He is the one from whom love begins. He is the one from whom we are given both access to love and patterns with which to offer love. Consider Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Consider him willingly and sinlessly going to the cross for our sins. This is what draws us out of ourselves and into the heart of love. This place where his mercy meets our unworthiness, and still he loves us. Standing in that place of watching Jesus, the call becomes both clear and accessible. It is then that we are to be willing to lay down our own rights and pour out that same love to the one with whom God has joined us together in covenant. So, Father, you love us abundantly and you love us well. Draw us into a posture of attentiveness that we might see you loving us and learn to, long to love and respect one another with that same purity, passion, and delight. And Lord, that we not seek to draw love from our limited wells, but rather from the unlimited depths of you. So remember, we love because he first loved us. So even though it's difficult at times, we love because he first loved us. And that's First John chapter 4 and verse 19. And that was your marriage devotion for this evening inside of our segment, Marriage Mentors.
All right. So we are discussing the topic sex before marriage. I think we may end up having to do a part 2 because I want to get into the cons next segment.
Mhm.
And we'll discuss those at length. Someone is asking, good night, what happens when one person is trying to make it happen and the other, like, they don't care after being married for 12 years? When you say make it happen, make the marriage work, right? Um, I'm guessing that is the case. Because there are many things that could go wrong. And I just want to try to understand what exactly you're asking about. Is it something specific? No, I'm not asking any names or anything like that. So you could be a little more detailed when you say trying to make it happen. What really, what isn't happening that you're trying to make happen? So while you're sending that message, just let me get another one. I was doing a degree in counseling, and counseling the main subject. The lecturer said to the class, don't stay more than an hour. Get your money and let them deal with their problem.
Mm.
That's devastatingly sad. That's devastatingly sad. When dealing with, as a counselor, it's not about the money, you know. And if people counseling others for the money, may God deal with them. But it then what was the purpose for them coming in the first place if they have to deal with their problems on their own? Yeah, what's the purpose? I think that's trying to help under false pretense. With the guise of helping, but it's really you want to milk the people. That's dishonest. All right. Person said fixing back what was broken in the marriage. Now, I want to answer, but it's still kind of vague. Different things are fixed different ways. No communication or spending time together. All right, now we're getting somewhere. How do you fix no communication? Start communicating. How do you fix spending time together? Start. It starts by doing that, and you have to be deliberate. Here's where no communication, because they kind of go together. Because you have to ask. You have to come to the point where you ask a question. Like ever so often, we ask each other, how you feel about me? You still feel the same way? And the follow-up question would be, what has changed? And as a couple, you have to ask, you have to ask those things just to check in with each other ever so often. Even more so when you find things are going awry. When communication lessens, all right, well, don't wait for a compliment. You compliment the person. Yeah. I think in this case, where you feel as though you have to do the work, use a different technique. And don't wait. And I say don't wait. plan the surprise, plan the the picnic, plan the, and you don't have to go out in public. These are things you can do. Do you all have children? Do you have children together? And how old are they? And why I'm asking that? Because it's important. Um, true, but I think this you have to ask, you have to ask the tough questions. Um, do you all ever have a moment where you probably in the car together, quiet, going somewhere, um, or do you all sleep on the same bed, right? Right. That's a good time to ask. Late in the night or early in the morning? Well, sometimes this is just as important as sex, you know. These conversations, they're meaningful. They make sex worthwhile. Um, and so what happens after sex? You all don't get the time to talk after sex? All right. Here's what. This is what I recommend. When you say leave and go where? Uh, because we're anonymous, I am asking these details. He leaves and go where? Leave, as in leave the room, sleep somewhere else, just outside, go and watch the TV or something. All right. Here's what. I want you to write your thoughts. And I say your thoughts, your questions, not from a place of aggression, but simply to find out where his heart is. Write it in a note and ask him to write back. Let the conversation start written first. If he doesn't want to write back and he prefers to talk, then feel free, have the conversation. But let that be the starter. Because I think at this point, it requires some measure of communication. And maybe I don't know your personality type and his personality type, what has transpired in the past and where things are at between the both of you in terms of what damage has been done. But I think he needs to hear your thoughts without an entanglement of emotion and just seeing words, seeing it or being able to receive it. Right. So I'm guessing that there's plenty damage, but I don't want to assume anything in terms of the extent of it. I don't know if you all would have had plenty quarrels about things in the past. Right. So right on point. So I think what he needs to hear is your thoughts without the previous emotion that would have gone. And you to hear his thoughts without the previous emotions that would have gone, to actually hear each other's hearts without the swells of resentment of what happened, because you want to at least reconnect at the point where you know that you still love each other. And let that be the starting place. for what is new to come. So my suggestion is write asking questions. Remind him that you still feel the same way that you did when you first got married 12 years ago. And you want to know where his heart is. That you are open to fixing things, and you're hoping that he is. And you want to hear that from him. You want to hear back from him. You want to hear that from him, that he's interested in fixing things to move forward. Yeah. So write down your thoughts and ask the questions. How can we fix it? Hear his suggestions. Ask him if he's open to going to counseling and counseling to really not to anybody to beat up on him, but really to help you both work through the challenges that you've had in the past, because you want to do it for them. When I say for them, for both of you and for the children coming up, because remember, they're looking at your example, and what you script into them is what they grow up and do. If they see mommy and daddy disjointed, disconnected, quarreling, and they believe that that's what marriage is supposed to be, they will build their marriages the same way. But if they see, yes, that you all went through a tough time, but you all fixed it, you all worked things out, they will come and ask, well, mommy and daddy, how you all did that? There will come a time when they'll come and ask, how you all, what did you all do? Maybe they weren't around to see the working through of it. And they will come and ask, I remember a time when things wasn't so good, but then you all were so much in love again. What fixed it? They will come and ask in years to come. But start the conversation with a letter, because he needs to hear your thoughts without the swell of emotion, and vice versa. Yeah, I appreciate your openness and your willingness to just chat with us. And I feel free to let us know how things go. So it's just about 11. We have to have a part 2 to this. And we are going to some of the more of the downturns as to the effects of sex before marriage, the long-lasting effects, the consequences of it. We'll get into some of those things next time. And again, we always appreciate your interaction during these segments. We're going to have this uploaded soon. Yeah, we're going to have it uploaded soon for our reviewing pleasure. For those of you who missed it, and those of you who'd like to share it with family and friends and stuff like that, someone who you think really needed to hear this and to be a part of the discussion, and maybe they want to be viewing it or listening live next time. Yeah, let them know. So to do that, we're going to upload it on YouTube. You can look for Marriage Mentors. Yeah, Marriage Mentors. I almost said Love and Marriage, but that's the email. You can look for Marriage Mentors on YouTube, and you'll find all the previous segments. Well, a few of the previous segments. When I say a few, quite a few of them that we've uploaded. You'll find things like The Power of a Woman. You'll find things like, give me some of the topics we would have covered.
Leaving room for him to be a man. Pornography, the effects of it, all of those things. Very, very interesting topics that I think we think infidelity would be helpful. Yeah. So again, we want to thank you. Giving and letting go.
Well, remembering you're on the page a lot.
No, I'm always coming up with the topics.
Page a lot, yeah. So again, we want to thank you all. And of course, the next segment would be on the 4th Thursday of the month. So every second and fourth Thursday, we have Marriage Mentors. And Thursdays that we don't have Marriage Mentors, we have spin-off conversations. So either you have a question, you might bring a scenario, but we always keep it interesting. But marriage mentors, we keep it strictly inside of topics that we record and upload. The other Thursdays, we don't necessarily record and upload. They're just conversations that we have, but they're still tailored around relationships, anything relationships. So, on behalf of Mrs. Mahone and I, we want to thank you for all the interaction, how transparent you were, the laughter, the just sharing your own life experiences and the questions as well. It's always a pleasure to delve into these topics with you and having you take the journey with us. So, again, we want to wrap things up and put it away until the next one. So, here we are, signing off. Mr. and Mrs. Mahon saying ciao for now.
Love you much.
Ladies,
Gentlemen,
people,
courting couples,
and all our single folk.
we've got something just for you.
Mentors.
Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded is the place to be every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
with yours truly, Mr. and Mrs. Mahon. Join the conversation as we dive deep into the taboo topics around love, marriage, and relationships. Topics like sex and intimacy,
How to live and cleave.
money,
Issues.
infidelity,
Singles in the church.
and more. So join us every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
right here on Sky 99.5 FM
Reloaded.